Well, after 26 episodes of analyzing Life is Strange, I think it's time to talk about specific lessons learned. Let's talk about level design. Level design in Life is Strange is really, really unique, and probably you're thinking, is it? I don't really remember anything special about their levels. Yeah, that's kind of the point. Life is Strange has no gameplay. So how do their levels feel normal, with one of the fundamental underpinnings of the game missing? Well, Life is Strange relies entirely on line-of-sight pulling techniques. So that's what I'm going to be teaching today. We're going to move through this demo level I put together here in Unity, and I'm going to teach you some pulling techniques. There are two categories. There's structural pulling techniques, and then there's gameplay pulling techniques. Let's get started. I'm going to hit play and show you. We're going to start over on the left in that O-shaped room. The O-shape is a structural layout. It's one of the four shapes that Life is Strange really uses a lot. An O-shape is a very appealing shape because you can't see the whole room, but you're invited to explore it. So in this case, the structure of the room is just an O, but the gameplay of the room pulls us into that O. The gameplay is why the room exists. So it's not just the layout of the room, it's also the layout of the gameplay within the room. Now, Life is Strange doesn't really have any gameplay, but it does have things you can walk up to, and that's actually all you need. What am I talking about? Well, here, look, this is an O-shaped room, and I can see that on both sides of the O, there is a desk and a column of light. And that kind of urges me to explore. Whichever direction I explore doesn't actually matter, the room is just around, but it does pull me forward and make me want to explore. Similarly, there are these little glowing points of light. These are mid-range points of interest. In an actual game, this might be a person, or a crashed car, or a malfunctioning light post, or a pretty piece of art, or anything really. The point is, it's something that we're going to notice. Sometimes we might want to walk up to them. Maybe it's a person. We're like, "Hey, Joan, how you doing?" Other times it might be something we can just take a picture of. Like, click, now I've got a picture of an exploding car. Either way, the point is to pull us into this room and to make us want to explore. Oh, look, there's another one. Maybe it's a poster of us. Who's making posters of us? Now I am saying maybe it's a, because I'm just putting in like placeholders. This is something I threw together fairly rapidly, and I don't want to actually spend, $100,000 building a nice level. So we're going to go ahead and just pretend that these things are wonderfully interesting little tidbits that we can interact with. And they're pulling us forward into this room, and they're keeping us from noticing that we're basically moving through a large empty space. They're populating that space. Now over here we've got a keycard reader. It's a keycard reader, but it says, can't use it. We don't have a right keycard. Okay. What's this? Well, here's a medium range point of interest that pulls us into a lot of short range point of interest, and that's kind of funny. But what's most funny about this is that we know where the player is going to be. These are short-term points of interest, so we know that the player is going to actually come here. The player is going to be standing more or less where I'm standing now. Why is that important? Because they're going to have a specific line of sight. And that is one of the keys of your line of sight manipulation. When you pull the player into the room, you know where they're going to stand because you've put gameplay there. You've told them to go here. So you know that they're going to go here, and you know where they're going to be able to see when they stop and look around. What's the best thing about this? They're going to be done. The player comes here and starts to interact. They're going to finish interacting, and they're going to be actively looking for something new to do. Well, there it is. So that is a really, really fantastic way to do line of sight abuse with gameplay. And this is a combination of things. It's an O-shaped room, but the O-shaped room has specific lines of sight. And so we can use those. We can put gameplay, we can put points of interest in those lines of sight, and we can pull the player around the room. Whether we went right or left in the beginning doesn't matter, because if we went right, we would be standing over there, and we'd be looking back here. Same exact situation. Now there's a big door here. It's locked. If it wasn't locked, the player still probably wouldn't go through it because a player's normal impulse is to fully explore a room before moving to the next one. So he probably would still come over here. Oh, look, another point of interest. And this, oh, there's a key card on this desk. Grab it. Also, maybe look around some more. And as I said, we know where the player is going to look because we know where the player is. We got the key card. Let's go over here to the key card reader. Beep, beep. And the door is unlocked. Dumb puzzle, right? Come on, isn't that puzzle a waste of time? Yeah. The point is that the dumb puzzles are a core feature of the level design. Now, exactly how much of this you need will depend on other pacing mechanics that are built into your game. But in a game with no other pacing mechanics, dumb puzzles are critical. They push the player to walk through the level in specific patterns. They make the player think that the level actually exists. They give the player traction. They make the player feel like the player is actually moving forward and not just waltzing through empty space. So dumb puzzles are dumb on purpose, and a lot of the puzzles in Life is Strange were really obvious and silly specifically because they're not there to be brainbusters. They're there to make the world feel like it exists and make the world feel like you're moving through it. Anyway, the door's open. Look at that little narrow L-shaped hallway. Big to small. What's that about? Well, I've mentioned this a couple of times. One of the core pieces of level design that a lot of people don't seem to realize is the most simple one. Big to small, to big to small, to big to small, to big to small. There's almost never any reason to go from small to small or from big to big, because changing up the size of your scale is something that jars the player just enough to keep everything interesting, and it's something that Life is Strange does a lot of. In fact, if you don't learn anything else from this, please learn to put things big to small to big to small. So here I got big, small, big, but even within the small, I've actually got big, small, big, small, big, small, big. So that is the basic big to small technique, and I really do recommend that everyone learn it, everyone use it. And here's the L-shaped room we've just entered. The L-shape is different from the O-shape, whereas the O-shape is an inviting room, which pulls us in and asks us to explore as we see fit. The L-shape is a high-tension room because we have to move through it in a specific pattern, but we can't actually see where we're going. So an L-shape will naturally raise your tension a little bit. Now, a lot of people have... Oh, look, it's an open box of uranium. A lot of people have this issue where they create 90-degree levels, and a lot of other people will tell people, big push to not use 90-degree levels. You must try and break the 90-degree grid. And that's a good call. You want to do that. I haven't done it because that would have taken time, and this is just a quickly thrown together example. But the biggest problem with your 90-degree grids is the 90-degree corners. 90-degree corners are the worst. So, how can you deal with that? Well, there are two basic ways. You can either use a layout method, a structural method, or you can use a gameplay method. And I've used both on this corner, just so that you can see them in action. So what I've done is, layout-wise, structurally, I have ground off this 90-degree corner and rounded it. That would allow me to see around the corner rather than feeling like it's just a sudden and heavy wall. Now, normally you'd put something here, like a plant or something, but I don't happen to have any loaded in on this game, so it is a senseless round off, but normally you'd have something, a water cooler or a plant or something to explain why the corner is rounded off. The other method is gameplay. Oh my gosh, more open boxes. Let's see what's inside. Okay, I'm done looking inside. Oh look, I'm already around the corner. So that 90-degree corner is awful, but it's mostly awful because of how heavy it is. And you can make it less heavy either by literally making it less heavy, grinding it down, or by distracting the player as they're moving through it. Now, that's not going to work if you are doing a game where monster closets tend to exist because the player will be like, I have to look around the corner, I have to look around the corner. Okay, now I can look over here. But in a game where there can't be anything dangerous around the corner, this is a perfectly valid way to work your way around it. And I have blocked off our forward path, but the truth is I probably didn't need to. Most players will try and explore clear side paths before they try to explore what's obviously the way forward. But in this case, I've made it so we have to. Let's go over here. So this is what I would call a hollow shape. So this is an O shape because it's got an island in the middle. This is an L shape because it's shaped like an L. Here's another O shape. This is a hollow shape because when we enter into a room like this, we can immediately see everything. All the points of interest are immediately visible to us. And that is a very powerful technique because it just throws everything into the player's lap. So in our case, we're like, oh, there's a window over there, there's 2 desks, there are so many things that we want to investigate. What order do we want to investigate these things in? It's all in our lap now. So it's kind of the sledgehammer of shapes. And a lot of game designers use these hollow shapes exclusively, and it really creates heavy, messy levels, like getting hit with a sledgehammer over and over. Instead, you want to use these somewhat sparingly. And there are only 3 or 4 in my entire level, and that's on purpose because they're pretty heavy. Even these tiny little rooms are fairly heavy. You feel kind of like there's a lot to do here, and I'm also kind of exposed. But we can see through into the next room. This kind of line of sight trickery allows us to get more information on what's in the next room, or more information on whatever's over there, and will keep us invested in the future of this level. We're like, okay, I'm definitely going to go over there soon. Over here, we have some interaction points. These clusters of interaction points are Life is Strange's equivalent of a goblin. Life is Strange doesn't have any monsters in it. Not that you can kill with a sword anyway. So instead, in order to create those spikes in density that we normally get from having a monster attack us, we get that by creating a literal spike in density. This is a dense number of interactions. So this is something we're like, okay, we gotta investigate the chair, investigate the keyboard, investigate the monitor. Oh, look, investigate the trash, investigate the paper, investigate the keyboard, and you gotta investigate all that stuff. And that is our equivalent to fighting off a goblin. Now, obviously, if you have goblins in your game, you're not gonna need to do this as much, but it's still worth doing because the player gets into modes. And there might be a situation where you have something that you want the player to go up and investigate. For a lot of designers, they're going to be like, okay, yeah, just put the key in on top of the desk there, and the player can go up and look for the key and find it. It's much more powerful to let the player enter into an investigation mode in their own brain. They're like, okay, there's stuff here. Let's rummage. Let's look. What's in the desk? What's in the trash? What's on the monitor? Oh, here's a key. Great, I got a key. What's in this monitor? What's in this chair? That is something that is really overlooked, and it doesn't matter how many goblins your game has, you can still use this technique because the player is still going to get into a mode, an investigation mode, and it's a real shame to like spike them into it just for a split second so they can grab a key and then rip them right back out. Anyway, the key's not even in that office, it's in this office. Boop. So here we've got another O-shaped room. This one's a lot more aggressive than the previous one, but we've already been able to see down the limbs of the O because of the puzzle that we created where you go into these offices, and that should give us enough of a pull to want to investigate around the limbs of the O. However, for the sake of exploration, I have also cut out a corner hint around this corner. Here you can see the sort of extremely uninviting 90-degree corner that you would normally get. This is a 90-degree corner with a cutout. It's much more inviting. There's stuff over here. We can't get in. We gotta get into that monster closet. Oh, look, it's a keycard reader. Beep. Monster closet. Well, for us, it's just a bunch of things to click on. But for a normal game, it could be, you know, a new gun guarded by 14 goblins. Now we're going to move into an L-shaped corridor. As I said before, an L-shaped corridor raises your tension. So our tension is now raised. Now we're going to move into an L-shaped corridor. As I said before, an L-shaped corridor raises your tension. So our tension is raised. Now we're going to move into an L-shaped corridor. And you can see that what I've done here is I've just created this S-bend using a bunch of L-shapes that got stapled together. And that is an easy technique, and I do recommend that you use it. If you need more tension, just staple more tension-creating rooms end to end. So in this case, the L bend is what creates our tension, and we've stapled a bunch of them together. And then we come out here, and ooh! All right, I can see. Look at this. I can see where I want to go. I want to go there. Cool, I'm going to go there. Examine some stuff, but then definitely going to go there. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Whoa, there's something here. This is the fourth of the major shapes that is used by Life is Strange. And we're over here in this room here. So, we've got the hollow shape, where everything gets thrown in your lap. We've got the O shape, where you're invited to explore the room at your own pace. You've got the L shape, which causes you some tension. And now we've got the U shape. The U shape is a little bit unusual because it's not just an L shape and an L shape. What it is it's a shape where you enter in and you can immediately see where you're trying to go. This puts a short-term goal, an immediate goal, in the player's head. They want to go there. And naturally, players who are focused on a goal are going to pay less attention to the rest of the game. And you can use that to easily exploit their lack of attention to pop in some surprises. Now, this works with whatever gameplay you have, whether it's monster closets or anything. If the player is looking at your right hand, then they're not going to be paying any attention to your left hand. It's the same basic idea as a magic trick. If you give the player something to go for, they're going to be real surprised when it turns out there are other things along that path. And that's something that's easy to kind of be like, oh, come on, that's not really how it is. It really is. If the player is focused on a short-term goal, they are mostly blind. And they will happily run straight into whatever monster you have around the next corner. This honestly only works in situations where they can't see around the corner. If this was a top-down game, there really wouldn't be anything interesting going on. It's only interesting because we can't see this when we come into the room. Anyway, once we've explored this U-shape and been surprised by this encounter here, we enter into a really, really long hallway. Now, this long hallway is another great way to adjust our tension. Something that's sparse and claustrophobic will raise your tension and make you feel like something big is coming. It'll also punch up the size of whatever you walk into because you were going from someplace really claustrophobic and stuck. So whatever you walk into next will feel bigger. And in our case, it really is very, very big. So there's something coming. What's coming? Oh my gosh, it's a huge room! And this is another hollow shape. This is a room where we can see absolutely everything in the room. The reason we've done this is because there is a point of interest over there. Maybe it's a burning building or our friend Jeb. Whatever the case may be, we can see that glowing pillar from everywhere in this room, no matter how we explore. If something happens to it, we'll notice right away. If it moves, we'll notice right away. But this is a situation where we can see everything, and we can choose what we're going to actually pursue. So that says pull blocking. Pull blocking is what we've been doing this entire time. If you know where the player is going to go because you've put gameplay in that spot, then you know what the player is going to be able to see. And here's a really explicit example of that. The player has to come over here to trigger this event. And now what? Oh my god! Because we know that the player can't see at ground level across this wall, we can go ahead and arrange for something to really pull the player's attention and be like, oh my gosh, I have to get over there quick! Run, run! Oh no, the world is exploding in red! And that is the basic idea behind pull blocking. It's just the most extreme example that I've shown you so far. All of the times that we've walked up to something is technically pull blocking. Now, blocking is not, we're not talking about physical stuff in your way blocking. We're talking about the arrangement of actors on the stage. So when I say pull blocking, I don't mean blocking you off with a wall. I mean moving you to a specific spot. Now, there might be walls involved, but the whole point is that you know where the line of sight is going to go. In most of the other examples of pull blocking that we've used, most of the other examples where we've pulled you in using a gameplay element, we've been arranging it so that your line of sight would be able to clearly see where you're supposed to go next. In this example, we arranged it so that when you triggered it, you actually couldn't see the specifics of what you were supposed to do, but you could see that there was something to do. Whether that's actually line of sight or whether it's like a squeal of tires in a car crash, it's all the same to me. The point is, we've partially blocked the player's perception of where they're supposed to go next, but they do know that something big has happened and it's behind them. And because they're fairly confident that they know the layout of the level, they will rush back around this corner in a hurry. There was a car crash. Why was there a car crash? Oh my gosh, it's so sad. Well, let's talk about the fact that nearly all of these techniques are symmetrical. Yeah, these levels work backwards and forwards. They work randomly arranged if you have tiles. So let's go ahead and just do the exact same level, but backwards, and talk a little bit about it. So this long, straight hallway builds our tension, and it makes us feel like something big is about to happen. Now, when we are emerging out into this huge room, that's a huge payoff. We're like, boom, something's happening. But when we're going the other way, we emerge into a relatively small room. This is just a rather under-impressive. It's not really that, it's like, oh, we have high tension and there's no payoff. So if you were going to move through this direction, you'd want to put something that is a payoff. Oh my gosh, there's a guy getting murdered right there. I have to stop them, but I can't get there from here. Quickly. Oh no, he has escaped. He must have gone this way. Oh, look at this high tension area where all these L bends have been stapled together, and it's raising our tension, and we're chasing a murderer, and now we're in this room. What happens next? Well, maybe we see some monsters hiding in that closet, in that office over there. There's lots of things that could happen, but the point is you can understand the pacing of your level. You can understand the tension of your player by manipulating their line of sight. And I hope that that's been super clear. I hope I've made that as clear as I can make it, because this is like my 20th take. So let's cover it just in summary, okay? There are 4 basic shapes that Life is Strange uses. 5 if you include a hallway. They've got the hollow shapes. Hollow shapes allow the player's line of sight to see everything. It just throws everything into the player's lap and tells the player to just deal. So whatever the player wants to do with that, the player is asked to just do it however they want. Whether it's a tiny room like this, a tiny dense room full of choice, or whether it's a big empty room like this where there's really only one thing going on, it's the same basic idea. The player just has everything thrown at them at once and just tries to catch whatever they can. So that's the sledgehammer. Don't use empty shapes for everything, or your players will feel overwhelmed. A less sledgehammery approach is the inviting OShape, where there's an island in the center of the room. This invites the player to explore through the room in whatever order they please, but it's still in the end going to be a linear outcome. You're going to go from here to here, but there's lots of other things that you might do in this room in any order you please. And one of the keys is that you're going to want to draw the player into the room. There's got to be stuff that they're interested in the room. Do not rely on a player moving through space just because that space exists. Always pull the player forward. In this O-shaped room, we pulled the player forward by having some clear goals. In this O-shaped room, we pull the player forward by allowing them to see into the room ahead of time, and also by having a corner that got cut out so that they would be pulled around the corner if they had managed to overlook the fact that there were windows. L-shapes are linear pathways with a bend so the player can't see where they're going. The line of sight is blocked. This raises the tension. You staple them together in a row and you raise the tension more and more and more. Easy stuff, right? Another option here is the U-shape, which is where the player can see their goal but can't reach it and has to go around via another path. When a player has a short-term goal like that, they will tend to stop paying attention and are easy to surprise and distract. Don't forget to go big to small to big, or big to small to big to small to big to small to big. Always try and alternate that big to small feeling because it's going to keep the player adjusting, always adjusting their expectations. Make good use of eye lines to make sure that the player always feels like the upcoming level is interesting and that they're going to be seeing important stuff ahead of time. Don't forget that these lines of sight work both ways. What is this way going to be looking from an office out into the O-shaped room. This way is looking from an O-shaped room into an office. So definitely keep that in mind. And don't forget that you can use long and short navigation cycles. So walking down this tight hallway in a straight line for 5 seconds or 6 seconds or 10 seconds is going to continuously raise the player's tension. On the other hand, the very short and punchy navigation of going from this hall into this room is going to lower their tension. And they're going to be like, oh, look at this opportunity. It's right here. And that's all layout stuff. It's all structural stuff. Gameplay seating is also an element. Use points of interest to pull the player into the room, and also use short-range interactable points of interest, whether those are enemies or key cards or whatever, to pull the player into specific locations where they are going to be able to see other specific locations. And that's also true here, where this puzzle allows us to see through this. And it's also true here, where these allow you to see down here. It's also true here, where you can't see what you could see. So there are lots of ways to do this and invert this, and it's a lot of fun to work out. If you don't have... use a lot of short-range interactables in clusters if you have short-range interactables, because the player goes into a mode where they want to interact with short-range interactables, and only providing one at a time is a huge waste. You can use weak puzzles to pull the player through your space so that the player feels like they're getting things done. They feel like this place exists. In this case, you go over here, you unlock it, you go over here, you unlock it, you go through here. And that's a very basic puzzle. Similarly, blocking this off until you get a key card, very basic puzzle. It feels like these might be really weak, like they're too weak to put in your game. They're not. They're exactly the right kind of puzzle to give the player a short break from fighting monsters, or a feeling of traction as they're moving through a level that has no monsters. And that is my overview of Life is Strange's level design techniques. We didn't get into any of the actual visual stuff, like pinning whales on top of buildings and stuff. But I hope this was a fun little introduction. Feel free to comment below if you want to say something about level design yourself, or if you think I missed something or got something wrong. Happy to hear from you. Next episode, we'll probably talk about blocking in more detail, specifically conversation blocking. Won't that be fun?